Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
This is Wisdom of the Sages. We do a daily study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the cream of the crop of all Vedic literature, resurrecting what is natural within the heart, which is divine love of sweet baby Krishna. And we have a special guest today because Sunday is interview day. And we have a really special guest today, one of my favorite people in the universe, Shyamasundar Prabhu. Hare Krishna, and welcome to the show, Shyamasundar.
Hey Krishna, good to see you, Raghunath.
We are eager, and Mara told me, hey, you're not going to believe it, but Shyamasundar book just came in the mail. We just got his book in the mail, and we each got a copy, and we're all excited, and I've been plowing through it. I tell you this, and it's quite embarrassing to say publicly, I don't read. I know, you're going to say, how are you a devotee of Lord Krishna? I don't know. In my old age, I just can't find time to read, but I've already knocked out at least 200 pages of your book. And that's from a completely person who listens to everything on audiobooks or YouTube. So I love you. You know, you're one of those people in my life that I want to be like him. I want to be like him. I feel like you were sent for me.
Please don't do it.
It's too late.
Shyamasundar, if you don't know him, he's an incredible author. And I want to say that although Srila Prabhupada, our guru's guru, brought bhakti to the Western world, it was Shyamasundar and his buddies, right, and his wife that really propagated the spiritual practice of bhakti all over the world. And one massive part of it was he became intimate friends with the Beatles. And it's the inspiring of, living at John Lennon's house and inspiring George Harrison that really these sacred mantras got heard all over the planet. He traveled with Prabhupada, our guru's guru, all over the world. He was Prabhupada's personal assistant. He had such intimate contact that it's like, man, you're like that last generation that's got all this like insider info. And I'm just so happy to have you in my life. And is this the third time we've had him on our show, right?
Second
time. We got 3 books. You should be on the show 3 times. But the third book of his trilogy, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, all of his incredible adventures. And I tell you, you are a modern day, what's the guy I call him? Indiana Jones. You are the spiritual Indiana Jones. And we're going to pick your brain today. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to speak a little bit first. I've got prepared some notes.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Can I first ask Mara if there's any announcements we need to make this week?
We don't have any announcements.
What?
Well, we're back tomorrow at the regular time, 8 a.m. Eastern. And Raghunath won't be here, but we'll have Vaisheshika Prabhu on, and we're going to be talking about We're going to talk about, the Gita Jayanti is coming up on Tuesday. So not only are we encouraging everyone to donate Gitas, which we're going to talk about more tomorrow, but we'll talk about Bhagavad Gita with Vaisheshika Prabhu on Monday, and we're going to have Paramananda on as guest host on Tuesday. Your brother from another mother.
My brother from another mother. Fantastic. We're excited. Yeah. I'm going to miss you guys, but I'll be back stateside soon.
Hey, when do you arrive? You're staying with me, right?
Yeah, I am. Me and Kaustubha are going to get together, have a little pillow fight, do some leg wrestling, make some no-bake cookies. Really excited.
No bake cookies. Okay.
I don't know. I got to check my schedule. I don't know. But Shyamasundar, why don't you just take it from here? We're excited to have you on board.
Okay. Well, first thing is, I want to say is I'm so proud of you, Raghunath Prabhu, your service. You're spreading Krishna conscious, Srila Prabhupada's message to these younger generations and beyond in these mad times. So proud of you. Sometimes from your ashram in New York, you bring these young people to India, and we meet there briefly. And I can see from just meeting you and talking with you there that you've got the spirit, the same spirit, Srila Prabhupada's spirit, increasing your love for Krishna by taking great risks to spread Krishna consciousness in the world. Thank you very much. It looks like we might be getting a little rain today in California, the first rain. We've been waiting for it for months and months. So by your mercy, the rains may come. The last time we talked, it was August 2020.
Wow.
We talked a little bit about history, how historical events shaped the perfect window for Srila Prabhupada to step through and into a generation of children perfectly prepared to hear him and follow him. And then, like rockets, take off around the world to spread his message. We talked about my volumes 1 and 2 of Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. Here they are. These are eyewitness descriptions of my adventures with Srila Prabhupada. How we saw him then as our fearless and funny pirate chief. Yeah. And we talked about the Beatles, and now with this new Get Back film, George Harrison has come back to prominence again. We discussed how he seemed like an old soul, a yogi from previous lives, who was born to embrace Krishna consciousness, and how he single-handedly, almost overnight, spread the Hare Krishna mantra to every nook and cranny of the globe. Now the Beatles are much in the news and so on, and George just keeps preaching from the grave. So maybe we'll get some more we can talk some more about that later, the Beatles. And last time, 2020, we talked about Srila Prabhupada's lightning fast journeys around the world at the dawn of high-speed intercontinental travel, and how letters were Srila Prabhupada's tool to knit together his far-flung, exploding movement in the days before emails and cell phones. These volumes 1 and 2 kind of portray Srila Prabhupada in action in dozens of places: North America, UK, Europe, Africa, Australia, Japan, even Russia. Behind the Iron Curtain, we went there in June of 1971. And in those days, Russia was sort of like North Korea is today. Yeah. No one could go to Russia.
No.
Imagine trying to start a spiritual movement in North Korea today. It was just like that. But
unbelievable.
He did it. And then on to India. Especially volume 2 describes Prabhupada's perhaps his most amazing feat. In just a few months, he revived Krishna consciousness in the place where it had nearly died. When we first went there, we couldn't find Krishna anywhere. We were expecting Krishna temples would be all over the place. We couldn't find Krishna anywhere in Bombay or anywhere in India. And within a few short months, Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada became Bhaktivedanta Swami, became a national sensation. And now, just see, India now. ISKCON is probably the biggest and most popular and expanding modern spiritual organization in India. There are hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, in the land where Krishna was born. But when we were there for the first 6 months, 8 months, we couldn't get one Indian devotee to join us. And now we come to volume 3. Here's the cover. If you haven't seen it, what do you think of this cover? It took me weeks of work to put together this cover. And I hope it's like a meditation piece to take you into self-realization. You can stare at this cover for hours. This volume 3 is like the summum bonum, or the grand finale to my 10 years of loving labor on these memoirs. Volume 3 describes the most active and fun-filled years of my close association with Srila Prabhupada. And in the epilogue chapter, I call it the afterwards, I've summed up everything, what it's all meant to me, and taking what happened forward to what's happening now. And I think you'll have some questions for me, especially from this final chapter. But first, I'll just sort of skim through volume 3 and bring us up to the concluding chapter. Volume 3 starts out with a bang in Mexico, where Srila Prabhupada greets hundreds of new devotees like the Pope from his balcony in the Vatican. And then he whizzes to New Gurukul in Dallas, the first Krishna conscious school. And then to the week-long Bhagavad Dharma discourses to hundreds of American devotees on a hilltop in New Vrindavan, where he's carried back and forth from the valley below on a palanquin. The whole week-long experience reminding us of an ancient Roman victory celebration. And then to Great Britain, where Srila Prabhupada visits George Harrison at his Friar Park estate in Oxfordshire. And I'll just read a little para from that description. We've just toured George's grounds, Friar Park, about 35 acres of cultivated gardens, and we've come back to the main house, which is like a 100-room castle. We're sitting in this little room. We sit silently for many minutes as the sun winks out. A quick glance at my watch says 9:15, and full dark descends on the room. Srila Prabhupada has just spent about a half an hour explaining the spiritual world, what it looks like and what it feels like to be there, what the trees are made of, what the houses are made of, what the people look like, how they act. He's been describing this for half an hour. Prabhupada holds us in a magic spell, and I sense this is a historic moment. Prabhupada has zapped us, convincing George beyond all doubt now. And when he finally speaks, George clears his throat, then says in a husky voice, I want to buy you an ashram like this place. I will get my estate agents to start looking tomorrow.
Wow.
And then we move to 2 Ratha Yatras in London, descriptions of 2 Ratha Yatras with Prabhupada in London, where he dances the entire 2-mile route from Hyde Park Corner to Trafalgar Square. Then we go to Paris, Amsterdam, Edinburgh, then back to India in October 1972, where Srila Prabhupada sat by Rupa Goswami's Samadhi for a month and revealed to us the nectar of devotion. And then to Hyderabad, where he spoke in the exhibition grounds there for about 3 weeks. And in the course of that period, I met some people who had just discovered a ruby mine. I brought some rubies to Srila Prabhupada. I said, what should we do? This may be a great opportunity to make some money for the new manor house in London. And Srila Prabhupada told me that I should take up this opportunity and see where it would go. More about that later. Then we go to Bombay, where we fight in the courts for 2 months with Mr. Nair over the land in Juhu. And we see Prabhupada as the ultimate lawyer. Imagine the most Byzantine, confusing legal system perhaps on the planet. Even now I thrill at reading this back, how Srila Prabhupada so precisely and quickly and deftly prevailed in these tangled courts. He would sit out in his house in Juhu, and Giriraj and Tamal and I would run into the courts every day in downtown Bombay and bring back the latest depositions and court filings. Prabhupada would go through them and write out the arguments, say, here, take this back tomorrow. And this went on for like 2 months to defeat this guy in the courts. And then, alas, in January 1973, I was relieved of my duties as Srila Prabhupada's secretary. But as GBC for the United Kingdom, for England, I returned to London, and just at that time, the spring of 1973, George Harrison had given us this huge manor house and a property in Hertfordshire. We renamed it Bhaktivedanta Manor. The place was totally run down. There were no light bulbs even in the fixtures. There was no money. We had no money. So I ran around London and Europe trying to sell rubies from that mine in India, but it was not enough. And that brings us to one of my favorite stories from volume 3. And I think it'll give you a special insight into Srila Prabhupada, our benevolent pirate chief. ISKCON London had about $25,000 in the bank. We had borrowed it from the society for a new premises in London. But now we didn't need it for that. So one day Dhananjaya came up to me and said, well, one of the devotees in London works in a bank, a Japanese bank in the city, and he is not supposed to tell anyone this, but it's a deep secret. But on Friday next, Japan is going to make it legal for each of its citizens to own up to 1 kilo of gold. So the price should really shoot up on that day. So I said, Dhananjaya, get all the money we can. He goes to the bank and brings back a briefcase full of 20-pound notes. Huge briefcase full of money, $25,000. And I didn't know anything about this stuff, but I'd heard that Zurich, Switzerland, was the place where you bought gold. So I flew to Zurich, and I bought at the Swiss Credit Bank. I convinced them to open me an account and buy 10 kilos of gold at $80 an ounce.
Wow.
Well, the word leaked. Srila Prabhupada heard about it. He was down in India. So he immediately gets on a plane and flies up to Zurich. So I take him down to the Swiss Credit Bank. He sits there, and he and I just in the lobby of the bank. And there was a new technology like, the gold prices and the stock prices would go by on those blinking LED lights in a banner, an continuous electronic banner. This is brand new technology for those days. And we sat there in the bank and watched the gold price go by over and over all day. Prabhupada would say, it has gone up 10 cents. Well, some of the GBC men around the society in the world also flew in to Zurich and began to protest to Srila Prabhupada that Shyamasundar is gambling with the society's money. So Prabhupada met with them in a room. He asked me to leave, but I left the door open a little bit so I could hear what they were saying. And they protested over and over, and Prabhupada said, yes, you're right. He said, we should not do this, or you should not do this. But Shyamasundar, he knows how he can do Prabhupada defended me. But then he said, we have to sell the gold the next day. They're protesting. Plus, it seems to have plateaued. So we sold it the next day for $90 and made well over 10% on it. And Srila Prabhupada opened his Swiss credit bank account. All the money went into his new account. And I'll just read a little para about that. I never knew what happened to that $26,000. Prabhupada probably used it to print books or put it toward a new ISKCON center somewhere. His new Swiss credit bank checkbook disappeared into his little white case. But often, years later, he would pull it out and show it and say, I have got my Switzerland bank account. So by late June 1973, Bhaktivedanta Manor was ready, and Srila Prabhupada flew there from India. And he sat down there for 3 months. And this was, to me, this was the culmination or the high point of all my years with Srila Prabhupada, the conversations. There were no outside engagements. So to keep Prabhupada happy and connected with what was going on, we scoured Britain, all the devotees, to find interesting people, famous people, scientists, philosophers, theologians, people on a high level, very interesting people, to come to the manor and speak with Prabhupada. We recorded over 55 conversations with these people. And so I've taken the essence of the best of those conversations and put them in this book. To me, that's the culmination or the highlight of that. My years with Srila Prabhupada were those conversations from that summer. I'll just read a little bit of one of the conversations. Have you ever heard of a guy named Arnold Toynbee?
I have, yes.
Yeah, he was one of the world's great historians. When I went to college, his books were our textbooks, his studies of Greece and Rome and so on. So to meet this guy was kind of one of the high points. So don't forget, this is an 80-some-year-old man. He knows everything about history. He follows the patterns of history. His books were the first kind of insights into how cyclical history is and how it progresses in huge movements, empires and movements. 53. These London conversations together form the most intense body of recorded dialogue during Prabhupada's years with us. And they will demonstrate Prabhupada's expertise on every subject, his tact, and his ability to match philosophy and wits with anyone. These conversations illustrate, perhaps better than any single period in Prabhupada's long career, that any person, whether humbly born or highly placed, agreeable or disputatious, whoever talked with Prabhupada left the room comforted, elated, and enlightened. These discussions reveal Prabhupada's humor, his grasp of the absurd, his finesse, and total awareness. And always, in every conversation, Srila Prabhupada never forgot Krishna, even for a moment. Okay, here's Arnold Toynbee. They're sitting in this room. They laugh a lot, these two great historians, enjoying each other's company. To seize this rare opportunity, I ask, Srila Prabhupada, what is your view of the future of history? Prabhupada, that is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Governmental power will go to the rascals and thieves and rogues.
Check.
Yeah. and their only business will be how to exploit the people.
Check.
So on one side, by not sufficient rain, there will be scarcity of foodstuff. And on the other side, the government will tax like anything. Only Krishna conscious people will be free from all these calamities. That is also stated that for 10,000 years, Krishna consciousness movement will increase. After 10,000 years, the gloomy picture of Kali Yuga will return. Still there is hope. Still there is time. 10,000 years is not a small period. So after these conversations, the book pretty much ends. When Srila Prabhupada leaves Bhaktivedanta Manor for India, at the end of September 1973. And then we come to the final chapter of the book. I call it the afterwards, the epilogue. It took me more than 2 months to write just 50 pages, less than a page a day. Because how do I sum up such an incredible 7 years of time with Srila Prabhupada? In order to answer the question, how did Srila Prabhupada happen? I thought, okay, well, I better start out with a study of time and space. So the first few pages of the afterwards will blow your mind with just the observation, the scientific observations of what our galaxy and our trillions of galaxies compose in the material world. And the time, we can't even imagine. We're just a tiny blip in geological time. What to speak of astronomical time. So how did Prabhupada and all these things come together in such a historical convergence? Mm-hmm. Well, after I studied this, I briefly described the years that I spent mining gems and gold, the business Prabhupada got me into, and trying to keep Srila Prabhupada and Krishna consciousness in my thoughts and actions. I catch the reader up with Mukunda and Malati and Jamuna and all the other best friends and fellow travelers on this amazing journey. And then I try to come to grips with what it all means, how to live in this nasty material world with eyes opened by the torchlight of Srila Prabhupada's knowledge. I guess the two most important points in this final contemplation might be these. Number one, I'm very optimistic. I'll just read a little paragraph here. Optimism is my primary emotion these days as I scan the planet and worldly affairs and weigh your accomplishments to date. I'm talking to Prabhupada. And picture how the future must unfold. I'm a little more reclusive now than I used to be, but selling these Chasing Rhinos books forces me to get out and about, and I check out ISKCON news websites every day and travel to temples around the world, and I'm so full of hope. Prabhupada, you always said that you don't want millions of stars, you want one moon. Well, you'll be happy to know you've created hundreds of thousands of moons out there in the world today. Your disciples and their disciples have expanded your pure teachings into every nook and cranny of contemporary geography and affairs. I just saw an article in the Dandavat website the other day about our new center in Antarctica. I don't know if you saw that. Some devotees from India have, at their scientific base there, have started a Bhagavad Gita class in Kirtan. Antarctica.
Kaustubha's going to send me there if I don't behave, he said.
What strikes me is the purity they have maintained. Purity. It's like you're still present, Srila Prabhupada, in an amplified way everywhere I go on this planet Earth. When I meet Raghunath Swami or Malati or Indradumna Swami or Bhakti-yogi Maharaj or Yadabara or Vishaka or Giriraj or Gopal Krishna or Gauranga in Mumbai or Jainatai and Radha Mohan in London or Raghunath and Kaustubha. The list is endless, so many moons. When I meet these great souls, I know beyond question that your pure legacy is intact and exploding forth. I observe hundreds of your devotees at ISKCON leadership meetings in Mayapur from my little bookstall, most of whom I've never met or can't remember their names. 3 generations on now, the simple names are all taken, and some are 3 or even 4 names long. And I'm filled with hope. It's only a matter of time. I won't live to see it happen, but already the flowers of Krishna consciousness delight the planet, and someday hence, your abundant fruits must certainly save the world.
Very bull.
So that's my first realization. I'm optimistic. And the second one might be that I've kind of discovered, at least in myself, that the key to everyday living is to use my mystic powers.
I knew it. I knew it.
Here's the way I sum that up in the book. I think if I can find it. Where is it? Srila Prabhupada, how do I cope with a world without you physically present here? Sometimes I get so desperate to see you again. How do I maintain that special tingling glow I always had when I walked by your side or entered a room where you were sitting? Around you, the colors, shapes, sounds, other people, everything became more intense, heightened, magnified. In your presence, I was thrilled with excitement, anticipation, a sense of comfort and safety, the certainty that whatever happens will be Krishna's arrangement and perfect in every way. But what about now? Yes, we have our sadhana, our daily practices, chanting the Mahamantra, reading your books, visiting you in photos or your Murti in the temples. But I've come to realize that the glue that holds me so tightly to your personal presence all these years has been what I can only describe as mystical experience. Prabhupada, you have opened the doors to perception and made it possible for us to see Krishna everywhere, at every moment of every day. You have ushered all of your devotees into the dimension of mystical experience. You said, devotees automatically have all mystic powers. The bird that flies past my window, the phone call I get out of the blue, the whispers in my head as I write these words. To sense the plan and hand of Krishna in all events has made it easy to remember you. Not only remember, but associate in real time with you as you reach over to pat my shoulder for a word well placed, or a tisk tisk to me for a thought ill-timed. As you shed your slippers and rustle across the rug to plop in that armchair over there and ask me, so what's the position, Shyamasundar? Or shoot me a note across the universe that all is well in Goloka and why not join me here? Anyway, so we have the unusual door to perception that we can see Krishna everywhere. Not only visually, but hear him and touch him and taste him and sense him in every dream him. This is our special ability that Prabhupada has given us. There's only, the words for it, maybe mystic experience is one of them. So anyway, Raghunath, fire away if you've got some questions.
Sure. Well, Kaustubha Prabhu, would you like to ask anything first? What
yeah.
a great intro. I could just want to shut up and listen.
Well, you sent me some questions.
Yes.
I've got a list of questions, and I've answered those questions on a piece of paper.
Okay.
But I'm kind of a hermit. I live in the woods. I don't talk to people much, so it's maybe hard for me to extemporize.
Mara, what does that mean? It's hard for him. Means he's hungry, I think. Get him some food. No.
I don't really have a red face, but the lighting has made my face very red today.
Just the one thing I just wanted to ask about, because it's so the timing of your rejoining us now, is that this film about the Beatles, Get Back, is all the rage right now. And it's it's a unique film that it's all this footage from 1969, right? 69. And that just kind of sat there for decades, and then has been really brilliantly edited and put together into 9 hours of film, three 3-hour segments, that really captures the Beatles at a very fascinating point where they're very near their breakup, but they're also kind of like, you were able to watch their creative process with them in the studio. With the tensions that were there, but the friendship and the love between them that was there, and of course these brilliant songs that they were creating, you can just sit there and watch them create them. But that was the time where you had just met them, correct?
Yeah, to put the whole thing in perspective, that film, I've watched it also. I had only met George less than 3 weeks before the filming took place in Twickenham Studios. I'd met him at Christmas time in 1968, and this was first week of January 69. George called me and said, please come down to this studio. He gave me directions, and I want to tell the other boys about Krishna. I want you to tell them.
Meaning the other Beatles, of course.
Yeah, so the whole story is described in my first volume. You can read it there in detail. But what you see in the movie, or that they've come out with the Get Back film, is I've just arrived. I don't know even George very well, so I sit kind of at the back.
And you're there in the film.
Yeah,
we can see you at one point.
Apparently, the camera caught me. But their whole idea was in this giant empty studio was to make a film. You saw, you followed the story, but no one had any idea what was going to happen. But at lunch that first day, there was a lunch break of 2 hours. I sat with all the 4 band members and myself, just the 5 of us, in the lunchroom, and for 2 hours they asked me questions about Krishna. And that's all described too in my book. By the end of that meeting, I have a feeling that concepts that Prabhupada gave us, like go back home, get back, the long and winding road, all of these ideas were already there in their head. And I think I helped bring them out. Because they didn't know these songs. They started composing them on the fly. I've heard some outtakes, recordings that they did that day that I was there, the first day. They weren't released in the film. They did a couple of Hare Krishna mantra renditions, not knowing the words, just making them up as they went. Hare Radha Raman, and it's just great. So that the mantra idea was sunk in their brains. Anyway, so I went a couple times, and you'll probably notice in all of the episodes, daffodils, flowers, there in vases, in all the shots. seeing that reminded me that we had no money, but somehow or other we got the money together to ask this and pay this florist, local florist, to deliver a bouquet of daffodils every day to the set personally. You had to go in and do it. And you'll see in the second episode, George has left. He's gone. He's left the band, and they're sitting there the next morning. Ringo and this producer Lindsay Hogg are sitting there on a bench, and this guy brings in a bunch of daffodils wrapped in plastic with a card. And he said, "Who daffodil flowers for you? Who should I give to?" And Ringo said, "I'll give them to me." And he opens the card, and Lindsay Hogg says to him, "Who are they from?" And Ringo says, "Hare Krishna." And Lindsay Hogg goes, "Harry who?" Ringo says, "The Hare Krishna people." So we were just breaking in. It was just beginning of our relationship with the Beatles. And in fact, that same day that we had the meeting in the lunchroom, at the end of it, John said, Yoko and I are buying a big property out in Buckinghamshire. It's a huge place and it's all run down. Do you think you and some of the Krishnas could come out and live with us and do some work? So that began that one. It all came out of
because you were all kind of homeless at that point too.
Well, yeah. We were all living in little flats spread out all over London.
Right. Well, I haven't seen the films yet. I've just seen some clips from it. But it seems like you met George at such an important time in his life, because it seemed like his spiritual life was just starting to really churn. And it was kind of leaving him a little bit like ready to leave the band, Well,
yeah, I think all of them, you can follow it. All of them were they'd already achieved the ultimate material success you could have in terms of money, fame, and everything. And they were starting to wonder what it's all about. And Krishna arranged everything to have them go to India first with this Maharishi and all that. Imagine how prepared they were already. They already knew. That was perfect timing.
And there's one scene where they're discussing that, actually. They're discussing having gone to India. And Paul and John are speaking together. And John says something like, I think when we were there, we should have just been more ourselves. And Paul kind of goes, yeah. And then, but George, he took that opportunity to say, be ourselves. That's the biggest joke of all. The whole reason we went there was to discover ourselves.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, it was a little sharp, and it was kind of like he was almost ready to say, I'm done with this band. It's like, I'm done playing this game.
He wrote the song in the movie. He writes the song one night called "I, Me, Mine."
Yeah, right.
I watched them put that together. They did about 30 takes of that song. And John and Paul they didn't like it. I mean, it was they waltzed. That's that scene of John and Yoko waltzing around the floor all through the day. I mean, mine. It's a waltz tune.
Right.
Yeah. But George was taking the philosophy. He got it. I, me, mine. He got it.
Straight out of Bhagavatam, yeah.
Yeah. That song
18.
wound up in the album finally.
Yep.
Amazing.
Well,
Shyamasundar Prabhu, you wrote about an earthquake that knocked a book off your shelf, open to the exact page that you have been searching for. Are there any other Krishna miracles? We're all into Krishna miracles here on the show, and magical things happen. Any real big, notable Krishna miracles to share with our listeners from writing the book, or in your adventures, or in your past? I mean, your whole life is really a Krishna miracle, truthfully.
Yeah.
But
as a hippie, in the early 60s, dropping acid every day, stuff like that, we were already living lives expecting miracles. It had to be magic. So Prabhupada fit right into that whole thing. Every minute with Srila Prabhupada was a magic time. You never knew what was going to happen, but it was always a pleasant surprise. I read it. You can read in my books about the $100 bills falling out of the sky, that when we didn't have any money, we just we're walking down the street early one morning, and $100 bills were blowing up the sidewalk. Paid the rent. We were behind 3 months in rent.
I'm going to call that a Krishna miracle.
Yeah, there's miracles.
I'll accept that one.
Endless. One of the biggest ones is we built this huge temple construction in Berry Place in London for months, elaborate, with the altar and just tens of thousands of pounds and hundreds of hours of work to build it. And Prabhupada was living there, and he said, okay, we're going to, I need to leave here on December 15th. And this was like December 1st. And I want to install deities before I leave.
Wow. In
those days, late 60s, you couldn't find deities anywhere. Where are we going to get the deities? The days ticked by. We were trying to call India and get some flown in, but we didn't know anybody in India. This went on, and finally we got a couple little tiny ones. We're going to have to install those. And just 3 days before the installation was supposed to happen, a guy called up and says, I have 2 4-foot-high Radha Krishna deities. He was from the Hindu Center out in East London. They have just arrived in boxes, but one of the fingers on Radharani's hand is broken. Can we repair this and use it? Or what should we do? Prabhupada said, well, I'll come out and have a look. By the end of the couple of hours talking with these guys, we carried them out over to the temple. They were ours. Radha Krishna appeared 2 days before they were supposed to be installed. Prabhupada had his plane tickets. He was leaving. That's the kind of miracle. You talk about miracles. So those were just connected one after another. It was a constant stream of miracles.
That's a Krishna miracle.
You talked about, the miracle of writing this book. I mean, the whole experience of 10 years of writing these books has been a miracle. It's the perfect convergence of time right now to write these books, because we've got the Veda base, a computer program with everything. Prabhupada knew from the moment he started his mission that everything he wrote and said should be recorded.
Yeah, that is quite amazing, isn't it? The fact that everything has been recorded.
Yeah.
It's as if he knew everything.
Well, he had to wait till they invented the tape recorder.
Right? There was no tape recorder.
Yeah. And before that, every letter he wrote, back into the 50s, he made carbon copies, triple copies of every letter. That was your first duty as secretary, was to learn how to use carbon paper to make 3 copies of everything all of his letters. And we have all those. And I can go on this computer right here, dial it in, and find out what he said on any day of his life among us. Now that's a miracle, huh?
That's a miracle.
Yeah. So that and the internet, I can find out, let's see, January 23rd. What did he do that day? So I find out the letter he wrote that day. Oh yeah, he was doing that day. Then I can go on make an internet search for the weather that day, wherever it was. Oh, it rained. Yes, it rained heavily that day. Oh, I remember now. All these, I can't remember any. I can't even remember what I did yesterday, what to speak of them years ago. But with having these tools, modern miracle tools, put together everything that Prabhupada did on a specific time.
Unbelievable. Now, after all your traveling, has your bhakti practice shifted at all or changed as you've gotten older compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Well, as an old man now, I'll be 80 in a few months, I've probably become very much more introspective and self-examining. I watch what I do from the moment I wake up, and I realize that everything I do practically all day long is filled with mistakes. I drop stuff. I forget stuff. I leave. Practically, my life is a connected mistake, one after another. But look, Prabhupada never made those mistakes. Why? Why did he never make any? He never dropped things. His every movement of picking something up or walking here or doing that, or what to speak of thousands of different decisions he had to make every day, were totally graceful and free from error. That's called a self-realized soul. I'm not, I'm not a self-realized person in any way, but I realized that Prabhupada performed that way. His acts were error-free because he had turned over his life to Krishna completely. Krishna took over everything in Prabhupada's life. Was Krishna's magically undoing. So that's one thing that I've realized, how full of error I am by comparison. But, and that makes me examine what I do every day and try to see Krishna in it. How's Krishna unfolding, this moving my glass from here to there, And you begin to see now, I'm so much more aware in my old age now that every leaf that falls, every bird that flies by, and what to speak of this raging world that's going on out there in this little tiny planet in the middle of like a grain of sand, is all Krishna's plan unfolding, his arrangement. He's in every atom, he says. Every aspect of our lives, you can see Krishna there. So you surrender to it. I still chant a lot, but I slower now. I chant much slower. Gosh, it takes me about 10 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes to chant around, because I try to listen to the sound and look around me as I'm doing it to see how the vibration, the Maha Mantra vibration, the holy names are interlaced with everything. The vibration of Krishna mantra, the Omkara, is in everything we can see going on simultaneously. That's mystic experience. If you live like that, in a mystic way, your eyes are open, you become a lot happier. And I think the main marker for spiritual progress or happiness is laughter. You can gauge how happy you are by how much you laugh, right? Prabhupada was always laughing. He laughed from morning to night. And if you look at hundreds of photos of me somewhere in the background around Prabhupada, and about 80% of it, I'm laughing. Gurudas had that same kind of rasa with Prabhupada. He just cracked us up. Many times Prabhupada would be giving some very serious lecture to hundreds of people up there. I'd be sitting over there just cracking up because I could just see that he was just putting on this kind of cosmic show for everybody. All right.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
That was so beautiful. I just love having you in our life. I think I can speak for the entire community. We all feel so blessed. Everybody is on the edge of their seat. The message board is going wild. And then there's the others. You're just seeing a handful of people on Zoom, but we get so much people out there listening, sort of like that we don't know that they're out there, but they're listening every day. And we are so happy you're part of our life and part of our family and part of our community. And I want to be like you when I get older. I'm already sort of old.
Without you, there's no purpose for my existence. Because you're there, I'm happy. That's how that all works.
I don't think there's any of us practicing bhakti, as followers of Prabhupada. I think we could all trace back, like if we went through the influences that brought us to bhakti, somehow it would always lead back through you and your close friends who serve Prabhupada so selflessly. Like my guru is Tamal Krishna goes, I got interested by hearing him speak. Well, he discovered Bhakti at the little temple that you started in San Francisco, you know, and you know, what to speak of, you know, your connection with the Beatles, and so much was done in India, and all, you know, it's, one way or another, we all go back to your services.
Well, you know, every day we all say that prayer, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. We give thanks to all of the devotees through history that have made it, all of this possible for us. I'm just tiny little link in that. That's all.
But you're a historic one. We're really tiny.
This grain of sand, this planet right now is going to be gone to another.
See, he's got that zoomed out perspective, Raghunath, you see? That's what we talk about a lot on the show. You zoom out and you're seeing things from that really zoomed out perspective, which is reality. He's got it.
Well,
He's got it.
You know, I noticed one of your questions, it says, now that you've published these books, how do you plan to utilize your remaining years in Krishna's service? I thought that was a good, because I'm always thinking that, you know, the end game.
That was Mara's question. It was Mara's question.
Oh, okay, Mara, thank you. That gives me a chance to sell my goods.
Please.
No, I think I'm going to do this winter, do the audio version, because like you were pointing out earlier, you know, you don't read anymore. People don't read anymore. I just been hearing that almost 20% of books now are audio books, right? Plus, I can make more money on the audio book. It doesn't cost me.
You don't have to carry them around.
I don't have to carry them around. I just my computer. Anyway, so, but one step at a time. You know, I still have to live and pay rent, and my only income is from these books. I don't do the mining business anymore.
Wow.
So I guess now's the time to ask your audience to buy my books.
Yeah, well, they're asking for the audiobook, actually.
And how can we get them? Can you tell us?
There it is right there. Can you see that?
chasingrhinos.com. Okay, everybody get that for a friend for the holidays. chasingrhinos.com. There's 3 volumes. Get all 3 and get them for your friends. Pass them around. And even if you have friends that maybe aren't people a little spiritual, but it's a great adventure. It's a great story. I just think it's a great story.
I try to write them like adventure novels.
It is an adventure. Your whole life is an adventure.
Yeah. And their special deal is $55 for all 3 volumes.
It's a great deal.
And if anybody wants more, like, you know, a box of 18 or something like that, you can write to me. Or write to me anyway if you feel like I have a question.
chasingrhinos@gmail.com. chasingrhinos@gmail.com. I'm saying that for all those who can't see that right now.
I see.
Thank you so much for bringing so much to our life. Barry, I'm so impressed with you. Like I said, we're sitting here in gratitude, in awe, and we subsist by just everything that you've done. I'm in London right now. So I went to the manor and I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about the Rath Yatra with you.
You're in London here. Right now?
I'm in London right now, and I'm thinking about you and the miracle. And the manor is better than ever.
I know it. Oh, it's just like whenever I go to England, my heart is filled with, they still have the same spirit there that we started out with, that anything goes for Krishna.
The community, they got 80,000 people for Janmashtami. It's unbelievable.
Where are you right now?
I am in North London, and we're doing something for Raghunath Swami's website, the Journey Within website.
Oh, great. God.
Yeah. Kaustubha is going to come out here and also record some classes for it.
It must be night there. Is it night?
Yeah, it's dark. That's for sure. It's 8 o'clock.
Well, I've only got one fantasy left, and that is to be with Srila Prabhupada again somehow. I can't see any other purpose to living if I can't be with Prabhupada again somewhere.
Well, they said, this is my theory, and you can shoot me down if you want, but when Krishna descends, all the associates come, all the demigods appear. And I want to say, your generation, Shyamasundar, I don't get them. I don't get you. All you guys, you just dropped everything in almost like unprecedented way. No one did what you guys do. The early disciples, they saw Prabhupada. You guys knew nothing about Hinduism, nothing about comparative religions, nothing about India. but you met this person, you left the world, you dropped it's as if you're higher beings that have descended to spread a spiritual movement all over the world. And now the roots have taken place, and it's going to change history. It's actually going to change. Historically, if you were to zoom out, something happened in those magical years between 1966 and 1977 that will change the rest of history. And you guys were a part of it. And I'm trying to figure out who you are.
It's not us. It was the person that appeared to us. It was Prabhupada, his example. You never meet a perfect person in your whole lifetimes. You'll never see a perfect person. But if you see one, you recognize it immediately. This is a perfect person. So what else do? You give up everything else. That's all. It wasn't us. It was Prabhupada.
You just give up everything else.
Because he was perfect. Anybody who meets somebody perfect is going to fall for him.
Unbelievable.
And the key is so much fun. When you're having so much fun, you keep doing it, right? You don't suffer when you're somebody who's perfect.
Now, Krishna consciousness is very fun. Thank you for making it fun. Thank you for doing all the pioneer work. I know all you guys, you opened these towns. I just have to give an appreciation. You opened Bombay. You sat in a cabin, basically, a hut. People got typhoid, malaria, to open up this Hare Krishna land in Mumbai. They went Malati, going to Mayapur, living in a hut, buying land, fighting off, who knows, snakes,
with a baby,
with a baby in your arms. And then people like my generation go there, and I'm just like complaining, hey, don't you guys have pizza today? What's going on? Why isn't there pizza going on? Where's the restaurants closed today? You guys were like the pioneers. You built the roads, you built the homes, you built the bathrooms for us. It's like we have to be at every moment in deep appreciation for the Lewis and Clarks of your generation that created so much for us. And I just want to thank you personally why we have you here.
Thank you for appreciating. But we were just having so much fun. That's the answer.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Hey, we want to thank Shyamasundar Prabhu for being such a part of our life, being our inspiration, being our teacher. Always a pleasure to have you. I don't know what else to say after this.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to say.
We'll get together one of these days.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I'm looking forward to it. I'm praying that we will. And everybody, remember, I'm not on the show, but Visheshika Prabhu, who we love so much, is going to be on the show with Kaustubha. Yeah, and he's going to be talking about Bhagavad Gita because it's the anniversary of Krishna speaking the Gita to Arjuna coming up.
That's right.
And then, of course, Tuesday, I'm traveling back to the States, so Paramananda is going to fill in for me. Paramananda, my brother from another mother, will be here. And, we're looking forward to having everybody here. And I will see you Wednesday. For now, we just lift up our hands in great appreciation. In our hearts, we understand our life is in divine hands. And thanks to our teachers for showing us the way. Haribo!
Haribo! Thank you.